Well, welcome to the season of Lent, the season in which we get to focus on our sin. For me, there was a time in which I thought I was a sin, that being gay was something that was sinful. And I really got stuck on that sin to the point where I couldn't imagine what else God wanted me to do in that world, in this world. In 2002, I moved to a gay and lesbian church in Mexico, and I lived there. And watching people walk through the threshold of the door, their shoulders dropping, and then finally being able to be who they are, was such a beautiful testament of what the church should be. Not a place where we go to pretend to be something we're not, but to go to discover exactly who we are. I still, at that time in my life, couldn't reconcile the fact that actually being gay was a gift from God, not a curse or a sin. But I did realize that I need to stop focusing so much on trying to get past the sin and just step above it and ask God, what else? Because as we're reminded, we're all trapped in that world of sin, whether we like it or not. The things that we participate in this world is we're complicit in a lot of ways to destruction and anger and hatred. So coming to terms with that really helped me move beyond my sin and really listen to where God was calling me in my life. And I was at a retreat in Mexico in 2002. I didn't know any Spanish at all. And it was during Lent, and we were fasting. And they gave us this nail that I wear. Each one of us got one of these nails to remind us of our commitments to God. And so every year during Lent, I wear this nail to remind me of my commitment to God. And so I'm reminded that this is a period of time in which our conversion story gets a little deeper. We re-examine our relationship with God so that way we can move into a more wholesome and beautiful relationship with God so that we don't have to fear God. God is slow to anger, full of loving kindness and mercy. And it's the mercy part that really got me. I wrote something. Yes, remember who we are. Mercy lifts us above worldly judgments. It's you and I who judge each other, not God. And so when we recognize that we are living in God's mercy, we can be refreshed and know that we are truly more than who we think we are, that we can live more powerfully into the person God is calling us to be. And so during this season of Lent, we do 3 things according to the instructions that Jesus lays out to us in the gospel. He does say, don't go out and be seen by everybody and assume we're going to put ashes on our head and we're going to go out into the world and show everybody what we've done. But really, this is a moment in which we as a collective body enter into that mystery of our humility. And it's not really a thing that we go around just to show off. It's really about who we are as people. And so he says, and so there's 3 things that I want to talk about. One is giving alms. And giving alms is giving money, possessions, clothing, things like that to people who need it. And Jesus says, when you feed the hungry, when you clothe the naked, you're feeding and you're clothing me. And so I want to invite you, when you're giving alms, to recognize that who you're giving to is a gift to you. You may be thinking, oh, I'm doing something good for somebody else, and maybe that's true, and they certainly might need your blessing. But you can't forget that God is working in the midst of both of you, and that person or that place is a gift to you. At St. John's, we give to El Porvenir, which is in Nicaragua, where we build latrines and you know,
Well,
yeah.
and washers.
They know. And this is not just a place that we chose just to do. It's a place that we're actually in real relationship with. Many of us go every year or every other year to visit and to work and to get our hands dirty and to be in real relationship with people. We don't just wipe our hands and say, look what the good job we did. We continue to be in this relationship. And that's what God is calling us to do, to be in ongoing relationships with each other. So when you're giving alms this season, just think about who you're giving to and what gift they are for you. And then you can meet God in the world in that way. By giving alms, we get to meet God out in the world. In our fasting, we can meet God in our body. When we fast, we're hungry, or we're denying a certain pleasure that we go to because we're either anxious or upset or whatever reason. But when we abstain from that, we're kind of forced to pay attention to the hunger pains in our body and to recognize that God is with us in that moment, in that pain, in that suffering. It also opens us up to recognize that the little bit of hunger that we're feeling right now is nothing compared to the hunger of many people in this world. And it's so easy during the rest of the year to go on with our lives and forget how connected we are to each other, and that the suffering of the world is our suffering too. And we're called to help lift that, not by ourselves, because we can't do anything by ourselves. We are called to lift people out of their suffering with God. And that takes me to the third part, meeting God in our heart. And that's through prayer. In all things that we do, we must do it through prayer. Prayer is more than just speaking to God. It's also recognizing that God is in our midst, in our work, in our conversations, in all the things that we do. God is there in the midst of us. So taking the time to be mindful of God's presence and to have a conversation with God in our hearts helps us move beyond the despair, the anger, the loneliness, all those things that our hearts tend to foster. When we take the time to let God in our hearts and have a conversation with God, this is painful. I don't know how I can do this. Help me. Then God will give us the courage and the strength and the wisdom to move beyond whatever that situation is. And so I just invite you that during this season, that you don't think of it as a time of great penance and woe is me, but a time in which we get to be introduced and grow into a deeper relationship with God. I think earlier I was talking about having a date night with God. Do you know what I mean? You know, when you're in a relationship with somebody, sometimes you get busy with your stuff, they get busy with their stuff, and even though you're in the same room, you barely recognize each other, right? And so you have a date night. You go out somewhere and you have dinner and you get to know each other again. I kind of think that's what God would like us to do in this season, is to really just get to know him again, to recognize he's not out to get you. He doesn't have a list of things that you've done wrong so he can beat you over the head. God loves us. His mercy is greater than any mercy that we can possibly muster. God's love for us is amazing. So let us keep working towards this path of conversion, this moving deeper and deeper into relationship with God. Because when we come together to show up, to celebrate with each other, to mourn with each other, to work with each other, to laugh, to tolerate, to bend towards understanding, and to be captured by love, we are surprised by our own transformation, and we're falling deep in love with God.